I was fortunate enough to see it on Broadway before I had any idea that I'd be involved. I saw it a couple of times, and I was very moved by the material. It was shockingly familiar to my own to my own history, and I found it to be a wonderful experience. One that particularly what interested me was afterwards, that there were people all around me who were talking about their own families, and people in the lobby and people on the street who were actually relating stories about their own families to whoever they'd come to the theater with, and I found that to be very very exciting.
Well, it's exciting just because, the movies have a kind of outreach that theater unfortunately doesn't have. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, and I wouldn't have had access to great theater. My way into works like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and Streetcar Named Desire and Shakespeare came through the movies. And so the idea that some little kid is going to see August Osage County and is going to look at it and say something about that speaks to me, or my family experience means something to them, that means a great deal to me. It's not natural necessarily to take something that's written for the stage and make it work on film. It's in fact historically been kind of difficult to do that. But we always felt that the story was compelling, the characters were compelling, there's a lot of humor. There are a lot of characters, there's a lot of time that passes, there's a lot of opportunity for movement in the piece, and so turning it into a film in some ways was not as difficult as, say, Killer Joe or Bug, the earlier ones I did, which are a bit more claustrophobic.
The family gathers, as it often happens now because we're so spread out as families across the country comes back together during a tragic event. And then find themselves rehashing a lot of their lives, which is what happens as adults. You don't have that many opportunities to be together. You get together and you suddenly discover that all the things that you have been trying hard not to talk about all come to the fore when you're all put into the same place again. Particularly as adults, I think we all have this experience of leaving our homes and becoming adults and thinking that we are someone other than who we were in our family, that we defined ourselves. Then walking back through that front door of your home and you're suddenly exactly who you were when you were 15. You have the same responsibilities within the family to do your part and your place. We all have a role to play, and that can be really startling to you the older you get, to find that you're back saying things you would never say away from your family.
Well, that's a big question, isn't it? I mean, how does any family get so damaged? It's the human condition, I'm afraid.
I'm always surprised by people who tell me that their families aren't this damaged. I mean, maybe that's just my own personal...
They're not paying attention. Well, I think the idea that, family, the ties that bind, that I think that one of the questions the movie is asking is, am I my brother's keeper? What is our responsibility to our family members? Where does it end? Where does the choice to behave as an individual and not as a member of that family, where does one end and the other take over?
Yeah, and that, and how do you stop the cycle of certain behaviors that get passed on in families? And when you discover as an adult that you can no longer simply blame it on your parents, but you're behaving in a way which you have to take responsibility for.
Yeah.
Like if I am at some point when you reach your your 40s, if you are complaining that it's actually your parents' responsibility, the way in which you're acting towards your spouse or your own children, it's time to sort of step up and say, I've got to make decisions about who I'm going to be as an adult. Well, we began with a wonderful piece of material that had won the Pulitzer Prize, and so actors all over the country knew about the piece and had many of them had seen it and seen themselves in different parts. So it was a great joy right from the beginning. Just the phone was ringing off the hook with people who wanted to be in the film, and Meryl was always our first choice for who we would want to do it, and she expressed interest, and Julia wanted to do it and expressed interest, and Chris Cooper is an old friend. We'd worked together before. I just called him up and told him to be there. He didn't really ask. Once I said what it was, he said, great. And then he called me back later and said, Charlie, right? I'm going to play Charlie. He wasn't sure. He just said yes first. And then and everyone else auditioned and won their roles through a standard audition process. And it was wonderful to just be in the room and hearing people talk, speak these wonderful words. Interestingly enough, my favorite scene is one that wasn't in the play, which was when we shot the running across the field. It was so beautiful, that with Meryl, with Violet being chased by Barb, by Julia, across the hayfields. It was just a beautiful day. It kind of encompassed everything that I'd kind of come to see about the place, and watching the two of them out in that field was just gorgeous.